Hey everyone, it's Matt aka Tech Ranger, and today we're going to be taking a look back at one of my favorite games when I was a kid, Dark Forces, because there's just been a remaster and it's awesome. One of the first-person shooters I've ever played. The story and the Dark Troopers. The mission design is pretty simple to start out. It gets a little bit more involved over time, and in this video we're going to take a look at the game and the remaster and see how it stacks up. I love this game. Saw this remaster, instantly bought it, and want to talk about it. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Star Wars game is, and if it's one from the 90s or the 2000s like Battlefront, let me know. So when I was growing up, I was into Star Wars, but all we had were action figures, the comics, and then video games like these. So at the time, I knew of like X-Wing, and then there was Dark Forces. Generally, I would just be like watching my dad or my brother play it, but then eventually I played it, and it was a really cool story that filled in some gaps before the days of canon and what was canon and what wasn't. So you were able to play as your character, Kyle Katarn, and then do some really cool things like this, steal the Death Star plans. So the first mission is pretty short in that you're just getting from point A to point B, you're getting Death Star plans, and then you find out about the Dark Troopers, and the missions later on will get a little bit more involved in that you have to do some puzzles in the game. Whenever you finish a mission, you just open up your menu and then you can go to the next mission. You can actually select missions from the main menu, but you have to beat them first before you can select them. With the usual suite of upgrades like 4K resolution and the high frame rates, you can actually bind pretty much anything. So if you're using a keyboard with your Xbox, or maybe even an Elite controller with a shift button, you can map a bunch of things. But one thing that is really cool is that you can actually swap to the software mode, which is actually the original game. So you can do that on the fly, so you can see how the game looked before and how it looks now. It's kind of a trip. If you have the opportunity to do that and map it to something, I just use the right stick when you push that down. If you're at all interested in how the original game looked in certain parts. So all the cutscenes in the game have been completely redone, and you can switch this off if you would like to just see the old ones, but the new cinematics and cutscenes are pretty cool and in the same art style as the original game.
The Empire has been keeping us on the run since the destruction of the Death Star.
But even as the Alliance celebrates this victory, another sinister plot is set in motion that will become an even greater concern for the rebellion.
This contemptible excuse for an officer will no longer divulge any more information to that rebel, Kyle Katarn.
You can toggle this in some of the graphical upgrades if you want, but I think this is really cool, especially if you played the original game. You can change the sound profile too, and that's a big dose of nostalgia. Moving forward, we have a lot of options for your controller and messing with dead zones and things, so if you want to get really into that, you can. These options are really nice, even the vibration setting, but you can turn off things like the head bombing, which on PlayStation, that was annoying. The PlayStation version actually came out in '96, so that's how I started playing Dark Forces. One last thing is the extras included in this menu. It's basically everything that the developers worked on or like were trying out and then actually ended up putting into practice for the full game. It's really interesting, and mid-90s game development is fascinating in itself because of what we have now. So with all that out of the way, how is the actual gameplay in this game? Well, it's fun. It's no Call of Duty in space by any stretch of imagination. Keep in mind this game was made in the 90s, around the time of Doom, and when all those clone shooters were coming out. You have a crosshair, but when you point in the direction of what you're shooting at, your bullets will kind of do this random thing where it'll just kind of go in whichever direction. This is basically like early days of aim assist, so when you kind of point in that direction, your weapon should kind of correct itself, but the results can vary. There are some puzzles in the game. They aren't too terribly difficult, but they will kind of pad out the runtime, and you do want to have some map knowledge of where you've been. You see a door that's locked, okay, I need to go back there, or there's some platforms there. One thing I noticed while playing is that it will actually keep your weapons and ammo and everything that you had in the stage previous. So if you actually want to choose a mission and play that again or go back to it, just keep that in mind, because on my playthrough I had no ammo right here, so I'd use some thermal detonators, which is always a good time, but you will take some hits and you might hurt yourself. I did find personally when I was playing like this third level here with the droids and then the monsters in the sewer, I was getting the same vibes I was back then. So as far as a faithful recreation of a lot of these levels and upgrading everything, this remaster is really well done. The two major things that stick out to me in this game is the weapon variety. There's just a lot of really cool weapons to use, and when your weapons get taken away, you get put in positions where you actually have to scavenge for weapons, and it can get pretty hairy. The other thing I really love about this game is the Dark Trooper encounters. The music kicks in, and it gets a little intense when the Dark Trooper is chasing after you. When you play on the harder difficulties, even just medium, you can get taken out by a Dark Trooper pretty easily if you're not paying attention. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you played Dark Forces or plan on picking up the remaster at some point. It's only $30 on the Xbox store, but I know it might be kind of a lot for some, especially if you haven't played the game and you're like, wait a minute, I'm paying $30 for a game that's almost 30 years old? I can understand the thought. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.
Catan will not be as easy to deal with. He is very resourceful. More resourceful, it seems, than even your Dark Troopers.
I understand the threat, Lord Vader. Catan was once an impressive Imperial officer, but he was weak and gave up on the struggle for our new order.